Good afternoon, my name's Dave Norton from Discovering New England History, and we're going to have episode 6 of the Norton brothers, my great uncles, and their time in World War I over in France. And we'll go to the next slide. And now, from the last episode, they started off in the great Argonne offensive, the largest offensive the United States Army ever had, actually, in the world. It actually exceeded that of Gettysburg. It exceeded that of the Bulge. It was just the largest attack and offensive in the world. And we'll go to the next slide. Now, I circled in green here the Argonne Forest, and that's the area we're talking about. And you can see from the previous episodes, they captured Cantigny, then they captured Soissons, and then they came across, stopped the German offensive at the Marne River, and went across there and took Saint-Mihiel. Now they've got to hit the head of the concentrated German line at the Argonne Forest, circled in green. We'll go to the next slide. Now here we go. The French tanks all arrive, and you got to remember now there are close to 1 million United States Army soldiers all ready to attack. We'll go to the next slide. And you can see here, this is a great picture here, the German trenches, they made them wider so that that's a British tank, so that the British tanks couldn't go right over the trenches. And this is a picture here. Of course, they captured this German trench, and there's the British tank over here, all stuck in the trench. We'll go to the next slide. Now, they all have got to line up. So they're all in the German trenches that they just took, ready to get into the forest. And if you look closely in this picture, there's actually 4 other soldiers that are all sleeping there. And there's one on guard duty. You can see him at the top. We'll go to the next slide. And wherever they were, they had to take shelter all along this whole front line. Some were in trenches, some were just outside here in shell holes, waiting, get ready for the signal for the next attack. That's Private Norman Norton and Private William Norton. And Norman Norton was a replacement, and best I can determine, he was assigned to also the 1st Infantry Division. We'll go to the next slide. And this is a great shot. Over on the right, it shows all the commanders marking out the attack, getting ready for the big push. And you can see them on the left, anywhere they could, all the American line stretched probably 50 miles long with 1 million soldiers. We'll go to the next slide. And you can see the fringes here, the Argonne Forest. You can see it's just desolate here. All the artillery, American, French, British artillery just pounded the place before they had their attack. And then the fog rolled in, and this is probably a good representative picture of what it would look like here. They had to attack through that. We'll go to the next slide. Now, here we go. They enter the Argonne Forest, largest front in U.S. Army history. And that's a great picture. There's not a lot of actual photographs of this Argonne because it's a very dense forest. But this is one of the classic pictures here. We'll go to the next slide. And the rest of the group, they're all waiting for their turn. You can see them. You can see the grim faces on the left, waiting for the signal for the rest to attack. And we'll go to the next slide. And here they go, over the top from the trenches and all the way in. The signal was given on an over 50-mile front, 1 million soldiers all attacking at once, all very well coordinated with the artillery. We'll go to the next slide. And this picture is unbelievable. It's taken in the Argonne Forest, and there's my great uncle there on the left, William Norton. And of course, he was with the big red one and the machine gun battalion. And there's a picture in the forest of a machine gun position set up right in the Argonne Forest. So you can see what they got. Probably water-cooled machine gun right there. And of course, very mobile. They fire and they move. They fire and they move forward to support of the infantry. We'll go to the next slide. Now, when they approached the forest, everything was, the artillery had stopped and everything was very quiet. It's very eerie because there was like a fog there, and you can see this. This actually used to be a church. Anything that was a clearing in the Argonne Forest was hit by artillery, but the Germans came right back in it and reinforced it. So we'll go to the next slide. And amazing, if you look real carefully here on the top of the picture, there's actually 3 German bunkers there. How would you ever see that? And there's a ditch right there, a dense forest, and you have to just stand in line and just walk right through there at Port Arms or whatever. Next thing you know, Germans wait until you're almost right on top of them, and they would cut loose with the machine guns. Go to the next slide. And there's one of the bunkers. They did a great job of camouflaging these, and there were thousands and thousands of these concrete bunkers, and each had to be taken one at a time. We'll go to the next slide. And here's the rest of the army. They're entering the Argonne Forest, and you can see on the right there, that's what they had to go through. There's not much left of even the foliage at the beginning here. And the Germans retreated into all those concrete bunkers. And we'll go to the next slide. And you can see how well they're camouflaged. I mean, you almost get right on top of them before you can see them. The whole forest, no matter which way you go, left, right, whatever, they're very close together, and they're all manned with with machine guns. The next slide. And now here's an attack. You're not going to get too many photographs here, but you can see the 1st Infantry Division. There they are. The Germans finally, when the Americans got close, they finally opened up all along the front with all these machine gun positions. And they had to rise up and attack them, and then hit the dirt, and then rise up and go ahead. And we'll go to the next slide. And amazing here, of course, Private Norton was in the 41st Infantry Division. That's on the left there. That's their patch. And they were primary losers replacements for the 1st Infantry Division, because the 1st Infantry Division, they suffered many, many losses in all the campaigns. And there's a picture of it, of each, if you can imagine this, you can't even see it, it's so dense forest. One bunker at a time. They had to pin down the machine guns, German machine guns in the bunker, rush them, and perhaps throw grenades in. That's how they did it all the way through this forest, Argonne campaign. And we'll go to the next slide. And there's that bunker on the right. Can you imagine that? It's all solid concrete. And over there on the left, that's what you had to do, hand-to-hand combat. And this Argonne Forest campaign lasted from September 26th to November 11th, 1918. That's when the Germans finally surrendered. So basically, that's how long this battle was, with 1 million soldiers going against at least 1 million on the German side. And the whole idea is they had to eliminate all these positions. We'll go to the next slide. And this is a great shot. You can see this hand-to-hand combat. Both the brothers William and Norman, that's what they had to go up against. And when they finished one bunker, they reorganized, got together, kept on going deeper into the forest. And it's interesting because I said today, all the older trees in the forest, they can't cut them down because there's so many bullets in them and would rip out the chainsaws. I saw that in a documentary. It's amazing. We'll go down to the next slide. And as they move down, look at the devastation. Those are all buildings right there, just completely leveled, all bunkers. We'll go to the next slide. And this is what one of the looks like today. That was that church, and that's all that's left of it today. It's in the middle of the forest. You can see all the trees around it. And wherever there was an opening, of course, the artillery would just completely pulverize it. But the Germans moved right in, and every one of those positions, they reinforced it with machine gunners. We'll go to the next slide. There's another close-up. If you look very closely, you can see the openings there where they would, the Germans would be. You'd have to clear out this whole area and keep on moving east. And we'll go to the next slide. There's your devastation now. They finally, the battle lasted all the way through to November 11th, and then finally Germany surrendered. And you can see that what's left here of the battlefield. There's a bunker, there's a shell hole. It's all, when it rained, there's nothing left of the trees. The place is just completely devastated. And you go through the next slide. And there we have it, Armistice Day, November 11th, 1918. And Germany surrendered. And you can see on the right there, there's all the Americans, soldiers, all taking off their helmets and everything and all cheering on November 11th. And we'll go to the next slide. And this is the largest military cemetery in Europe. American Expeditionary Force, they had 1 million soldiers, and in just this one battle, the Meuse-Argonne Cemetery probably lasted close to 2 months, and that was it. 26,000 Americans were killed in action, and another 120,000 were wounded. And statistically, in this particular battle here, it's the greatest in American history. The Battle of Bulge didn't have this many Americans killed, and neither did Gettysburg. This is it, and yet it's the least remembered probably of all the historical World War II or whatever Civil War type battles. But you can see on the left, you see the hedges around there. That's only one section. There's 8 of those sections here in this cemetery. And we'll go down to the next slide. Now we have a story here. This happened at the 1st Infantry Division, a big red one. There it is. A fellow, when he was in Paris, before they even got into all the trenches and everything else, when they came over, he saw this dog in the streets of Paris, just stray dog, and really kind of you can see the dog kind of all roughed up. And he attached to the dog, and he snuck the dog into the unit. And there's a book that's made about this. They named the dog Rags. It's the hero dog of World War I. And he was the mascot of the 1st Infantry Division. And what a dog. He finally found a home. He was just, wandering aimlessly in Paris. And he finally found a home. They let him stay with the unit for morale purposes. And he was actually in combat It's a great story. That shows that on the right there, that's a book that's available. It's a children's book. It's just a terrific looking book that you can actually get. And it's really something to get. So we'll go to the next slide. Now in this next photo here, there's a picture of the dog with his master here. He's Sergeant Donovan, and he was the mascot of the 1st Infantry Division. He was a terrier, and they named him Rags. And what's interesting is he really, really helped out. They used him to run messages between the front lines and all the headquarters. The dog was actually caught in all kinds of combat. He was bombed, he was gassed, he was blinded in one eye. He through the artillery shells, he ended up being deaf in one ear. And it was really interesting. Interesting story is when they first got him in the trenches, okay, the artillery shells would come over and the dog would just go down and put his paws over his head. And everybody was laughing at, boy, he's not kind of cowardly for a dog. We don't need him at all. And then they found out that he would actually go down and cover his ears before they could even hear the shells coming over. So what happened was, the dog was terrific. Every time the Germans would open up fire, the dog would hear it, and they would watch the dog, and they would all take cover and go in their dugouts. So he really saved the 1st Infantry Division. He saved a lot of soldiers just by doing that. He provided early warning for incoming artillery shells. And he also was really good for keeping away all the rat infestation in all the trenches. And he was a companion to Sergeant Donovan. There's Sergeant Donovan right there. And this dog survived the whole Meuse-Argonne campaign with the 1st Infantry Division. So we'll go to the next slide. And what happened was they had another attack. It's unclear exactly what happened, but the dog, they actually made a gas mask that fit the dog for the gas attacks. And probably what happened was Sergeant Donovan put the gas mask on the dog Rags to save him first, and then he put his gas mask on because Sergeant Donovan was really, really sick with the gas, and they had to take him to a hospital. And what happened was he died. Sergeant Donovan died in a hospital over there in France. But the dog didn't, after the dog went through his normal grieving process, the dog was still the mascot, and everybody's just absolutely adored the dog. And you can see him there and left. That's when they came back to the United States. He would sit there and watch all the soldiers drill and whatever. That was taken in, I think that was in New York someplace. So we'll go to the next slide. And there he is. Believe it or not, the dog lived to be 20 years old, and he's buried in Silver Spring, Maryland, in the 1st Infantry Division on the right there. Gave him his own grave site, and they put the flag there. That was their mascot, and it's quite a story. It's a children's book came out with all of this, and it's an excellent story. So we'll go to the next slide. Now, what I did is, it was the end of the war, and I did some research here. And what the people of France did, they had these a lot of different photographs that they, I guess they made up of World War I, because the soldiers over there, you don't have time to collect photographs or anything like that, obviously. But when the war was all over, they put them together in a package, and then each soldier, I guess, would have a lot of these to take home with them. They're all made in France, and there's a whole series of those. And I have the originals right here on my desk, if you can take a look at these. It's kind of... I had no idea what they were. Oh, I knew what they were. They're 100 years old now. And I have all these originals. They're actually photographs in my possession. And I had no idea how they got them or whatever. My father, he might have got them in his possessions. I can't recall. But there's a whole set here, and I'm really kind of proud to have these. And we'll go to the next slide. Now, we had parades. Bristol, Connecticut. They all returned to Bristol after World War I was over, certainly on November 11th. And you can see there's a picture of Main Street, Bristol, Connecticut. I mean, everybody got out to have a parade. World War I, which was the Great War, which is they had never seen anything like that in the world before because it was involved. I mean, you had England involved, France involved, Germany involved, Austria involved, Hungary involved. I mean, it goes on and on. All involved in this, and that's why they call it the Great War. And there's an interesting picture that I came across there over on the left. And that was taken at Rockwell Park, Bristol, Connecticut. And you can see the soldiers. They must have had a canvas type of thing there with a felt on it, and they would all just go down there and flip them up in the air. I guess you would have to be there to imagine the sigh of relief that the world had when this war was finally over. And of course, the sadness in all these cemeteries. Like I said, just in this one battle, 26,000 Americans were killed in Argonne, another 120,000. I mean, these soldiers, they had to do everything. I mean, to go through gas attack after gas attack and go through machine gun fire and go through barbed wire, hand-to-hand combat, eliminating bunkers. It's just amazing. And on that scale, if you look at it, they only had a year to organize this whole thing. General Pershing did a tremendous job. And the soldiers, I mean, he put this whole army together. It ended up at over almost 1.5 million soldiers from scratch. And got them all trained and got them all sent over to France. And they had to prove themselves, and just an incredible story. So we'll go to the next slide. And here's the parade again. This is a great shot. I know where this is. That's the train goes over the top of the street there, and that's in Bristol, Connecticut. And you can see all the soldiers. They were probably from all the different outfits. There were many different divisions, of course, that went over there. And all those different divisions, they probably got all together. I don't have the exact date of this parade here, but you could see them all marking the end of World War I. We'll go to the next slide. And I did some research here on William Norton. I was just curious and went on the internet. And what they did is, after the war was over, the state of Connecticut, they had every one of the soldiers that was in World War I, they sent them all in mail, sort of like a letter to write down where you were, what you did, and whatever like that. And they consolidated all together, and that registry exists today, which is great. And I circled in red on the one page of it on the that registry. It's on the website right now. You can see there's Norman Norton and there's William Norton. And under William Norton, on the left, I put that's exactly what it is. It'll basically say where he's from. Riverside Avenue, Bristol, Connecticut, when he was inducted. It's got everything on there. Second Machine Gun Battalion, when he was discharged, all the basic records. And then I couldn't believe it when I saw the last sentence there, cited for gallantry in action. And that's where I have proof today that he received a Silver Star over in Flayville Village when the 1st Infantry Division attacked that. That was his Silver Star Award. That is amazing. The family never knew any of this because both of the brothers really never told anybody of all their experiences in World War I. So that started my research right here. And I said, you know, there's a story here, and I want to get this all together for the family. And I certainly did my best. We'll go to the next slide. And I put this together. There's William Norton. And of course, the 1st Infantry Division and Machine Gun Battalion. I picked that one up in the 16th Regiment. That's the one that I found in my father's old cigar box. And on the left is the, it would have a silver star. It has a victory and World War I victory medal. And back then, the first silver stars, they would just put a small silver star in the middle of it. On the right is what a silver star looks like today. So he was quite an honor for our family. And we'll go to the next slide. And after the war, Private Norman Norton, there's a picture here. They had a reunion every year. The 301st Trench Mortar group. You can see them all there, and there's the flag, 301st. They got that picture. I put his picture in red. And they would get together, the trench mortar battery, once a year. And that's a great picture that we found in the family. And we'll go to the next slide. And there's, I love this picture, color picture of Main Street, Bristol, Connecticut. Returns to normal. Year was 1919. You can see the trolley tracks there. The post office on the left, that's no longer there. The war is over. We'll go to the next slide. And here's the final slide, final destination, Private Norman Norton, you can see, and he's buried in the West Cemetery in Bristol, Connecticut, and that's his headstone. And on the right, there's William Norton. And he's buried in Oak Hill Cemetery, just outside of Bristol in Southington, Connecticut. So that's the story of my 2 great uncles. I did the best I could to put it together with all the limited information that we had, but that's my tribute to them and to all the veterans that served in World War I. So I hope you enjoyed the 6-part series. Have a good afternoon.